Okay, we are on Capri 22 sand down in the cabin. We have an ice chest which serves as a step, but also holds quite a variety of different equipment. We have our logbook, we have some other information, we have a key for the Lazarettes, and a kitty, and that's where the money comes in. We'll talk about that later. But I'm also going to get out the kill switch for the engine, because we'll get into that later. So I'm going to put those outside for now. Other things down in the ice chest, there's a club burgee, there's some couple tools, some tape, just odds and ends. If we go to the logbook, you'll see that Fairwind uses a fairly detailed log sheet, and so that's something you fill out every time, listing the skipper or instructor, the crew, whether it's training or not, and then on the departure side, you just start going through a checklist where one of the first things it asks is about the past 3 logs. So you want to make sure there's no issues. And there's a couple of comments here, but it's mainly about having a great sail and mild winds. Starboard traveler line needs replacing. So things that the boat chief can take care of. And here there is actually the Honda 5 horsepower was installed on this boat a couple days, about a week ago. So we'll look at that in a little bit. So when you've looked at the last skipper, and he didn't fill it out. You're supposed to list whether the boat is safe to use, and it's a yes or no issue, and this particular person did not fill that out, but he didn't list any safety equipment, so we can assume that, or safety issues, so we can assume that there were no safety issues. So you would list as not applicable. If there were problems, then they will either be fixed, yes or no. If they're not fixed, well, then you might not want to take this boat out. So now we're going to do a walk around to check the hull, standing and running rigging, and then write up anything we see. If it can be fixed, we fix it. If not, well, boat probably needs to be taken out of service. So we're going to go ahead and do that right now. It's good to develop your own routine. My routine is to start at the stern, just take a look at the motor, the engine mount, the rudder, and even the ladder, and just see if there's anything that doesn't look right. These boats get used by a lot of people, so it's important to do a thorough inspection. What I do then is look at the hull as we walk around the whole boat and look for any scratches, scuffs, gaping holes. Hopefully you don't find that. And so far the hull looks pretty clean. There's one little scuff on this port side that should be cleaned up. And if you do cause a scuff by hitting one of the rub rails, then you should really clean that up. And there's cleaning gear in the dock boxes. Okay, so we've looked at the hull. Now we're going to look at the rigging. So as we walk back, we're going to look at the shrouds and make sure all the keeper rings are there, cotter pins, and they appear to be good here. And about at this point, I look up and make sure everything looks good up top. One of the things with the fact that we have a spinnaker halyard, which is above the furler, it's important that that be snug because it can become tangled with the furler. The furler has its own halyard internal, so there's no external halyard for the Genoa. Okay, now if we look down, we look at the base of the furler, and you can see there is a clevis pin, and it has a retaining ring. That is important because if that were to fall out, the mast would fall down. There are no stays, lower stays fore and aft, like on, as we'll see later, on the Catalina 22s. The mast could hold up even if the forestay were released, but on the Capri 22, that is not the case. Okay, so we're going to continue along. It's a little easier to see the shrouds, the turnbuckles, the keeper rings, and cotter pins. And you really need to check this every time because with these rings, and you can see how close the jib sheet is to that, if it snags one of those, it can actually pull it out. Okay, as we come back, we're going to step on. And now we're checking the backstay. We've got the pins, we've got cotter pins. And everything appears to be in good shape. So the backstay should be left in the off position, and this one was actually left on fairly tight, so I'm easing it off. If you leave it on really tight, it can actually put a permanent bend in the mast, which is not desirable. Oh, look what we have here. We have a part of the backstay without a cotter pin or ring. So that's a definite no-no, and especially if the backstay is loose, this could actually fall out. Now, because it's a two-piece backstay, it wouldn't necessarily be completely disastrous, but we're going to fix that. So we're in actually Sans dock box. I've just taken the lock off. It labels the tools and hardware, and we should find those rings that we're looking for. So this is tools. Here we go. So we just have to find the appropriate ring. We are going to take two of these and see which one works best. And we could always change it out later, but this will keep it safe. So also in here you can see there's another toolbox down below, some extension cords, a battery charger. Also we have gauges for measuring the tension for tuning the rig, which is done periodically. Anyway, put all this back. We're going to go with the big ring for now because it works, and we can change it with a smaller one later. But anyway, the rig is now safe again. Okay, so let's go back down and go through the rest of our safety equipment. The checklist now talks about getting the motor going and all of that, but let's go down to the safety section because we're going to look for a boat hook, and we have a boat hook right here, and air horn. have an air horn, and we have a couple different kinds these days. Some are types that you can pump up. This is an old Canaver Super Blast Marine signal horn. So okay, PFDs and throwable type 4. This is a type 4. Has multiple uses. It's a Coast Guard requirement in addition to the life jackets or PFDs. This is a throwable, so you could throw it to somebody. It's also handy for sitting on, and we use them for man overboard drills rather than throwing crew overboard. And so we definitely have one of these, and we typically will want that in the cockpit. We have life jackets, and they're tucked around in various spots on both sides of these quarter berths. And so you always want to make sure you have enough of the PFDs for all your crew. 2 paddles. We have one wooden paddle and then one collapsible paddle. You can actually paddle this boat if the engine fails. Wouldn't want to do it too far, but that is an option. Okay, check bilge pump, bailer, and sponge. So let's look at the bilge first of all. And these bilges are really pretty shallow. There are no through holes on these boats, so typically the only way you're going to get water in is if you're having a really exciting day and you catch a couple waves. But there is a bilge pump which we'll explore later. It's a bellows type, and it's back on the aft starboard side. We do have a bucket that has a sponge, a couple scrub brushes, and can be used as a bailer as well. Now, as long as we're here, we'll take a quick look. We do have a porta potty, and if you actually needed to use it, this panel comes out, or you can slide it out and use the porta potty. Basic rule is if you use it, you clean it. Okay, so back, anchor and rode. So on these boats, that tends to move around. In some cases, it's up where the porta potty is in the bucket, but on this boat, it's back in the aft starboard locker, which we'll go to in just a minute. But first, we're going to look for 3 unexpired flares. The Coast Guard requirement is to have 3 day-night flares, and what you will find on these boats is typically a flare kit. Sometimes they're round, bright orange. We have some old flares in a bag. They're expired, but we also have new flares. So these were purchased just this past year, and you can see that they expire in November of 2024. They come in 4 packs, so that meets your requirement for 3. This pack has actually not been opened, so they're brand new. Other things we have in here, as long as we're looking, we have winch handles, we have a first aid kit, and usually a flashlight, handy if you're out sailing at night. But if you're going to be sailing at night, make sure that the flashlight is working. This one does have a little bit of charge on it, but it's not super bright. Again, this boat does have running lights, although you need to check to make sure that the battery is fully charged. Okay, so while we're still down here, before we go up into the cockpit, check other safety equipment. Okay, we have a fire extinguisher, which is right here, and that gets checked every workday. We've already looked at pretty much everything. If we now scan forward, we see that there are cockpit cushions, another type 4, although it be it older. The spinnaker gear, these are spinnaker sheets, and a variety of other spinnaker gear, and the spinnaker is in a bag. So We do offer periodically spinnaker training classes, and that can be a lot of fun, especially on a little boat if you're coming back from Anacapa. So first we're going to open the Lazarettes. Okay. So we see that we have a handle for our bilge pump, which is on a little tether, which plugs in here. And so if there were water in the bilge, you could pump it out. It would go overboard. We also have in a milk crate, the anchor is actually up a little forward, so it's a Danforth anchor, and we have a small amount of chain and rope. So if you wanted to anchor, you have an option for anchor. Now it's kept back here by the skipper and could be deployed from the stern and then brought up to the bow. On some of the boats, it's actually up in the inside the cabin. Okay, so we're going to now look at our fuel tank. So this is fuel. It's unleaded gasoline for these outboards. This tank is self-venting. Some of the tanks you have to open a vent, but this one is self-venting, so that's not required. It has a fuel gauge, which is reading full. I'm always suspicious of these gauges, so I always just lift it, shake it a little bit, and it feels full. But if it were less than half, you'd probably want to stop at the fuel dock and top it off. You could use money from the kitty to pay for that gas. Now we have a bulb for priming the fuel into the engine, but since these boats go out almost several times a week, that's typically not necessary. We're going to take the cover off. Okay, so the engine is in the up position. We're going to tip it down, and you always want to tip it down first before you lower it with the engine mount. So come back here, find a lever, and my hand's on that. Grabbing the engine and pull it forward and lower it down. Okay. I'm now going to put it into neutral and attach the kill switch. It goes right here. So this is the best way to stop the engine, and there's a little stop sign. You just pull this off and it kills the engine. But to start it, you have to have it on. Okay. We also have a internal tank, which we're not using since we're using the external fuel tank, but this is a valve that turns on that internal tank. So these engines can be used on dinghies and other things, in which case you wouldn't necessarily have an external tank. To turn that on, you would open it, but we don't want it open because we don't know if there's any gasoline in here, and if there's air and it starts sucking air, the engine's not going to run. So you want that closed. We're now going to lower the engine and put it in the start position. And then we can have the choke on, but sometimes it's easy to just try pulling it. These engines are pretty new, and they will sometimes start just without having to use the choke. So we're going to go ahead and pull it through slowly once, just to make sure it is really in neutral. and then give it a tug. And you can see it's actually started right up. So I'm now adjusting the throttle a little bit. We can see water is coming out. These are water cooled. If water is not coming out, you shut off the engine. The other thing we have over here is a green light. That means we have oil pressure. If there was a red light, it means there's no oil pressure and you'd want to shut the engine off. And then go find out why there's no oil pressure. So, nice engines, they start easily, and are for the most part well behaved. So we're going to go ahead and turn this off, and all I'm doing is pulling that kill switch. Now, if I'm if I'm out sailing, I'll put this switch back in because if I need to start the engine in a hurry, I don't want to be fumbling around looking for that switch. So if I'm out sailing, I will lift the engine up, and then to tip it up, you actually, since it's still in the water, and that would slow you down if you're sailing, you go into forward position. It's best to tip it a little bit, and then engine's completely out of the water, and you have a little better sail that way. Hope you enjoy this video, and definitely watch it before your first training. Thanks.